We begin with breaking news in the Middle East, where the world is anxiously waiting to see whether President Trump moves forward with U.S. strikes on Iran. Good evening, everyone. I'm Elizabeth Vargas. President Trump says nobody knows what he's going to do with Iran. Does that include himself? Just a short while ago, the president wrapped another meeting with his national security team in the White House Situation Room. Here's what he said to reporters just before heading into that meeting.
I have ideas as to what to do, but I haven't made a final. I like to make the final decision 1 second before it's due, because things change. I mean, especially with war. Things change with war. It can go from one extreme to the other. War is very bad. There was no reason for this to be a war.
As we await news on the president's decision, at least one Democratic senator, Richard Blumenthal, attended a classified briefing with the Pentagon secretary today and afterwards said the odds of a strike are greater than 50-50. Meanwhile, a day after President Trump boasted that the U.S. knows where Iran's supreme leader is hiding, calling for his unconditional surrender, the Ayatollah emerged with his own message to America today. The supreme leader telling Iranians, quote, "The damage America will suffer if it makes a military intervention in this field will undoubtedly be irreparable." Tough talk, to be sure, but history is replete with similarly brash statements made by other autocratic leaders right before they were deposed by the U.S. military. President Trump noted earlier today that Iran appears to be totally defenseless, with no air defense whatsoever, and with Israel in total control of its skies. Now, that doesn't mean this conflict is over. Israel and Iran traded missile strikes for a sixth straight day. The IDF claims it is targeting military sites as Iran goes after civilian homes. In fact, just hours ago, the IDF reported that 60 Israeli planes struck more than 20 military targets across Tehran today, including weapons and centrifuge production sites. Israel is also diminishing the Islamic Republic's fighting capacity. The IDF posted this video today showing a strike on a loaded Iranian launcher just moments before it was going to fire a missile at Israel. It says an estimated 40% of Iran's missile launchers have now been taken out. We have team coverage tonight from all angles. NewsNation's Robert Sherman is live for us in Tel Aviv, and Kelly Meyer is standing by with the latest developments at the White House. But let's begin with Robert. Iranian missiles are still launching toward Israel, Robert, fewer of them to be sure. But Israel's already easing restrictions and reopening the economy there is kind of a message of victory. What does this mean?
Yeah, it's a slow step, and people are starting to feel as though that they're at very least a little bit closer to the end of all of this. But it's that loud blaring of sirens which reminds everyone here that they're not quite to the other side of all of this yet. We saw two different barrages on our position here in Tel Aviv today. To your point, Elizabeth, initial reports are smaller in size, perhaps even less than half a dozen in some of these barrages here, but still something that people are taking very seriously. And whether people are below ground in the shelters or above ground in the cafes, the war with Iran is dominating every conversation here. But one particular question is rising to the top, and that is, will the United States get involved and strike Iran, or will they steer clear of all of this? The supreme leader of Iran giving stern warnings to the Americans to stay away and not get involved, or there will be consequences. But the United States is still standing by here, and the Prime Minister's office says they remain in constant contact with the Americans. But the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem is closed tonight and set to be closed through Friday due to the security situation that is ongoing here. But Ambassador Mike Huckabee announced today that they are working on measures in order to evacuate Americans who are stuck here in Israel, whether that's through flights, whether that's a maritime corridor through Cyprus. There are people on the ground here who are waiting to see what happens here, but are hoping to get out as quickly as possible. Elizabeth?
All right, Robert Sherman with the situation from Israel. Now to the White House, where NewsNation's Kelly Meyer has hurried to the ground. Kelly, President Trump says he may wait until the last second before he makes his final decision, but right now it seems all signs are pointing toward launching a strike.
Yeah, that's right. And it seems like he's laying out his reasoning, of course. He keeps saying that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. So already laying out his reason if he does, in fact, decide to join Israel in striking Iran. But he did say today in the Oval Office that Iran was weeks away from obtaining a nuclear weapon, he says. And then he also said it's probably too late to make a deal with Iran. Take a listen to this.
They should have made the deal. I had a great deal for them. They should have made that deal. 60 days we talked about it, and in the end they decided not to do it, and now they wish they did it. And they want to meet, but it's a little late to meet, but they want to meet, and they want to come to the White House. They'll even come to the White House.
So President Trump saying there the Iranians want to come to the White House. The Iranian mission to the UN hitting back on that claim today, saying, quote, no Iranian official has ever asked to grovel at the gates of the White House. President Trump again in the Oval Office repeating that Iranians wanted to come to the White House, and the New York Times reporting tonight that Iran would accept President Trump's offer to meet soon. So President Trump could be building up some of the pressure for Iran to come to the table again, or he could potentially decide to attack and join Israel in this. We also want to mention that the U.S. military is building up their presence in the Middle East, as we've been following, Elizabeth. Fighter jets and ships in the region. We did talk to a U.S. official today saying that the USS Ford is moving next week to Europe, and that could be moved to the Middle East. We know that the Vincent is already in the Middle East, and as well as the Nimitz. That one is on the way. And we are hearing tonight from Reuters, just reporting moments ago, that the U.S. military has moved assets from bases in the Middle East that may be vulnerable to any potential attack from Iran. Elizabeth.
All right. Lots of signs there pointing to potentially something happening soon. Kelly Meyer from the White House tonight. So Iran has had a nuclear program for decades, but until now, Israel has not attacked it, at least on this scale. It has in smaller scale, nothing like this. The IDF has cited recent Israeli intelligence, which says that Iran is fast approaching a, quote, point of no return, meaning it's on the verge of making several nuclear weapons. That, of course, is frightening for many countries, most notably Israel, which Iran has long threatened to annihilate. But some have rightly pointed out that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been citing intelligence reports just like that one for some time now. In fact, he's been saying for decades, since 1996, that Iran is just weeks or months away from its first nuclear bomb.
The deadline for attaining this goal is getting extremely close. By next spring, at most, by next summer, at current enrichment rates, they will have finished the medium enrichment and move on to the final stage. From there, it's only a few months, possibly a few weeks. Weeks away from having enough enriched uranium for an entire arsenal of nuclear weapons. Weeks away from having the fissile material for an entire arsenal.
Joining me now is Yael Leiter. He is Israel's ambassador to the United States. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us. So as we just heard, Benjamin Netanyahu has been warning since 1996 that Iran is on the brink of having a nuclear weapon, weeks away, months away. There are many in this country, as you know, who are saying, we've heard this before and it wasn't true then. Why is it true now? What's the answer?
Well, if that position wasn't so sad, it would actually be kind of funny. Look, the day before the 60-day limit that President Trump gave to the Ayatollah ran out, the IAEA, the international agency responsible for nuclear energy oversight, basically vindicated everything the prime minister's been saying in a damning report. It said that they're racing towards a nuclear weapon. Now, this should take us back, Elizabeth, to another time in history when it took 15 years for Adolf Hitler's plans to engage Europe in a world war actually were meted out. He started talking about it in 1923, but it took 15 years until 1938 that he actually had the political and military power to thrust the world into chaos and to 65 million dead, with 6 million Jews being gassed as well. And there was one man at the time, Winston Churchill, who was warning the world, and he was saying, look, this guy is going to take us into a world war. The prime minister has been very much like Churchill over these years, and he was called the same thing Churchill was called. Now the president completely understands that, has taken world leadership and gave the Ayatollah 60 days. It's very clear that we're not going back into a pattern of 1938. We don't have a second chance. We don't have a second chance. They call us a one-bomb country. And what we're doing is not only for Israel. Ultimately, what we're doing is for the Middle East and the world.
The Israeli National Security Advisor said today, quote, this operation will not conclude without a strike on the Fordo nuclear facility. What if President Trump does not authorize a strike? What will Israel then do?
Well, let me point something out. You know, there have been a number of surprises so far. You know, nobody believed that Thursday night we could take out all of the nuclear scientists and all the leadership of the IRGC instantaneously, all at the same moment. Obviously, there are a lot of Iranians who are very much in favor of what we're doing. And there are all sorts of collaborations going on, all sorts of possibilities. But what the National Security Advisor said is absolutely true. We are absolutely committed to finding a way to seeing this through so that Iran no longer poses an existential threat to the state of Israel.
But how will you do that? How will you do that if President Trump doesn't authorize the strike?
Elizabeth, it's going to be very difficult to put out a plan on even with the importance of NewsNation, can't exactly put out the maps this evening in front of you. We're committed to doing it. We have some surprises. We showed what we're capable of doing. We showed the collaboration we have with Iranians on the ground, and we will, please God, see this through. They will not have the ability to have a nuclear weapon, nor will they have the ability to build ballistic missiles that they're firing into our population centers. It's just going to stop. We're at the head of the snake. We fought this war for a year and a half. When they sent Hamas over our border and slaughtered 1,200 of our civilians, men, women, and children, in a few hours, and then they sent the Hezbollah to fire missiles into our population centers. So we've lost 900 soldiers fighting the proxies of Iran, and now we're getting to the head of the snake. We're going to chop off the head of the snake. We're going to stop this existential threat from Iran, and we're going to change the Middle East. And you're going to see, Elizabeth, that countries are going to line up after that to normalize relations with Israel. And the vision that President Trump has for a new Middle East, for a peaceful Middle East, for peace through strength is going to happen. This is going to be Abraham Accords 2.0. Abraham Accords 2.0.
You mentioned in your last answer a number of surprises coming up. You've been talking about this. Surprises planned for tomorrow night and Friday. You said they will, quote, make the beeper operation seem simple. For people who might not remember, the exploding beeper mission took out the leaders of Hezbollah. It was unprecedented and incredibly audacious. I know you can't reveal what's about to happen, but you do say something's about to take place.
No. Actually, that's a misquote. I was talking about last Thursday, the opening of the strike, that there were surprises that came to bear. And in the future, it's going to be understood and uncovered what exactly we did last Thursday and Friday to implement this strike. Look, we achieved superiority over Iranian skies in 3 days. The Russians haven't achieved superiority over the skies of Ukraine in 3 years. We've accomplished what Russia couldn't do in 3 years. We've accomplished it in 3 days. And we're slightly smaller than Russia and Iran. So there are a number of things that we pulled off, a number of surprises we've already pulled off, and nobody should underestimate our ability to implement further surprises in the future.
So surprises yet to come. But bottom line, Ambassador, you think you can finish off Iran's nuclear program with, or more notably, without American help?
You know, Elizabeth, I would best quote the Chancellor of Germany, who when he left the meeting of the G7 and spending some time with President Trump, said just yesterday that Israel is doing a favor to the entire world. This is a devilish administration. This Ayatollah is a menace to the world. He's a malevolent individual. His administration is malevolent, and they've caused murder and mayhem throughout the world.
Okay.
So actually, the world should be joining in and assisting Israel in this war against the mullahs.
Ambassador Leiter, thank you so much. Come back and keep us posted. We appreciate
Thank
you
you,
being here.
Elizabeth.
All right.
Good evening.
For
Bye-bye.
more on this now, we're joined by Congressman Rick Crawford. He's chair of the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence. Congressman, great to have you back on the show. So President Trump says Iran wants to negotiate, and it's not too late to negotiate, but Iran is denying it. You heard that official statement. Are they just trying to save face and not admit that they are actually ready to basically cave?
Sounds a lot like what they're trying to do. It sounds like they just don't want to appear to be groveling at the feet of the United States and certainly not at the feet of Israel. And so they're trying to posture a little bit. Understandably, I get that. But the reality is the president has left them some options. So we'll see if they are exercising prudent judgment or if they want to continue this engagement.
According to President Trump's own director of national intelligence, U.S. intelligence has not matched Israeli intelligence on how close Iran is to having a nuke. As you know, Tulsi Gabbard said in sworn testimony to Congress, all of you in Congress in March, that while U.S. intelligence showed Iran was speeding up enrichment, she said, quote, the IC, intelligence community, concludes that Iran is not trying to build a nuclear weapon. Has U.S. intelligence changed since the time she gave that sworn statement?
Intelligence changes all the time, and Director Gabbard does not go out and collect the intelligence. What she does is receive the briefs and then report. So I suspect that, in the course of those months, that certainly the intelligence could have and probably did change.
But you've received no word officially of that as a member of Congress.
We get updates all the time. In fact, we got one earlier this week. I'm not in a position to comment on the information that we received, but as I said, the director's job is not to go out and collect intelligence.
Right. But I asked because President Trump said that Tulsi Gabbard was wrong, that, in fact, the Iranians were very close. You are on the Select Intelligence Committee. Can you just confirm what President Trump is saying, that our American intelligence, not Israeli intelligence, American intelligence, says that Iran is, in fact, moving to get a bomb? Because this country went into one war in Iraq based on faulty intelligence. The intelligence is really key here.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm confident that the president will make the best decision based on the information he has in front of him at any given time.
Senators had a classified briefing with the Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth today. Those senators emerged saying they believe there's a better than 50-50 chance that Trump will launch a strike. Do you think he's made a firm decision yet?
I would not attempt to characterize his decision or his decision-making process. I think certainly those options are available to him. I think he's been given a variety of options, and that's what the intelligence community, the National Security Council, is there to do, to provide him with options, and ultimately the decision is his to act on what he believes is the best decision.
And do you believe the president needs to come to Congress for approval before launching an offensive military strike?
Not necessarily. I mean, if we were going to declare war on Iran, then most certainly this is not necessarily a formal declaration of war. I would think that if we were going to sustain activity, there are operations against Iran, then he would certainly come to Congress and say, hey, I want a declaration, and that's your responsibility, Congress, and he would ask us for that. But he has executive authority to take action as he sees necessary, and then come to Congress and report it, and any further action in terms of declaring a war would require congressional action.
And would you approve that?
I'm not in a position to say that today. I mean, we would have to wait and see what this action yields and what his plan might be if we were to sustain military action in that theater.
All right. Congressman Rick Crawford from the House Select Committee on Intelligence, thanks so much. Really appreciate you joining us. All right, coming up for us, U.S. aircraft and warships are on high alert in the Middle East, and more are on the way. But there's really only one American weapon, actually one weapon on Earth that happens to be American, that is capable of taking out Iran's biggest nuclear facility. General Wesley Clark joins me next to talk about it. And then later, a stunning verdict in the Karen Reed murder trial today. A second jury finds her not guilty of murdering her police officer boyfriend. But her legal battles are still not over.
everyday Americans undergoing military-style training,
Why would a dentist need to know how to shoot a rifle 300 yards?
arming themselves with skills to survive. NewsNation takes you into their boot camp for a first-hand look. Elizabeth Vargas reports tomorrow.
All right, President Trump says he's still weighing his options on U.S. intervention in the escalating war between Israel and Iran, but the U.S. is already shifting a lot of military aircraft and warships into and around the Middle East tonight. Officials say U.S. fighter jets and refueling tankers have been deployed to the region. The jets are now patrolling the skies around the Middle East. Aircraft carriers are on the move as well. Officials say the USS Carl Vinson is in the Arabian Sea with 4 warships in its strike group. The USS Nimitz is on its way to the eastern Mediterranean. But of course, most of the talk has been centered around the most powerful weapon in the U.S. arsenal, those 30,000-pound bunker buster bombs. They can only be delivered by the B-2 stealth bombers. We're joined now by retired 4-star General Wesley Clark, former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO. General, great to have you on. So the USS Nimitz is on its way. The group is on its way to the Middle East. It'll reportedly arrive in a few days. Would the United States do anything? Would it strike in Fordo before the Nimitz gets there?
Some people think they could strike, that we could strike tonight. So we could strike whenever the president says we're going to strike. And there's a trade-off, Elizabeth. If you wait till all the assets get there, what if the Iranians look at these aircraft, their landing sites and so forth in the region and say they want to preempt us? So suddenly they launch on us before we strike. On the other hand, the longer we wait, presumably, the more Israel can do to degrade their capacity to strike. So it's a real trade-off of understanding of risks. Got to know how much warning we might receive and what the risks are of waiting. But in general, the longer we wait, the more Israel has degraded Iran, and the greater our leverage is. And maybe, the Ayatollah's people behind the scenes are going to look at it, hey, oh, we're toast, toast. But you've got to weigh that against the risk of preemption by Iran that could catch a bunch of U.S. aircraft still on the landing strip somewhere.
So what's your sense, given your many years in decision rooms like the one that's happening right now in the Situation Center, what's your sense on at least what the advice is from the military on timing? Like, are we talking days?
Sooner rather than later. And the reason is, first of all, there's a certain momentum that builds up with the military. They don't like to sit around and wait. People are going to say there's a risk if you wait. What if they strike first? And so I think, the aircraft have been deployed for 36, 48 hours. The air bridge is there. More assets can come in. But the B-2s are waiting. They're in Diego Garcia. They're ready to go anytime. My guess is that the pressure will be on for the president to make a decision on the sooner, maybe as early as tonight, maybe tomorrow night. My best guess would have been tomorrow night, but I'm hearing people say it could be tonight.
All right, let's talk about what it is he's considering, which is dropping one of these bunker-busting bombs at least one on Fordo. A B-2 bomber would have to fly it in. It can carry 2 of these bunker-busting bombs at a time. And one bomb, as powerful as it is, might not be enough to destroy the Fordo nuclear bunker.
Exactly. So, I think you're going to see several bombs dropped on that bunker. But then, Elizabeth, you're going to end up, and I think the American people understand this, and I know President Trump would understand it, if we're engaged in this and we really want to take out their nuclear capacity, we're not going to just drop some bombs and leave. Somebody's going to have to go in on the ground, see what the damage is, finish destroying the equipment.
Is that American troops? That would be American boots on the ground, or would Israeli commandos go in?
Could be Israeli commandos. It could be Americans. We could bring the International Atomic Energy Agency in there with radiation suits. You could have a Ranger battalion landed around that site, and the special forces go inside it. It's those plans, no doubt, have been talked about and worked out in advance.
So the bunker buster's never been used before. It burrows deep into the earth before it then explodes. And the Fordo nuclear facility is about 300 feet deep underground in the side of a mountain. Do we know for sure that this bunker buster bomb is powerful enough to get down there and blow it up?
No,
We
of course
don't.
not. Of course not. And look, if they really wanted to make it safe, they'll have various rooms that are walled off with compartments and different levels. And, you know, you can do a lot of things to defeat even earth-penetrating ordnance if that's what you are trying to do. And apparently it is what they're trying to do. So, and we also don't know, Elizabeth, whether there are not other installations heretofore undiscovered in eastern Iran that are associated with the nuclear program. And if you look at all Israeli strikes, they're all on western Iran. So there's a lot that we don't know about this, really. I think, though, that the pressure from the military is going to be get this thing over with. Start it now. Don't take a chance that the Iranians can preempt us. We'll take care of any threats.
Go in, go big, go quickly. Finally, I've only got 10 seconds, General, so please, a quick answer on this. There's a lot of concern about the potential of what Iran, desperate and backed into a corner, might do. There was a big article in the Financial Times about concerns that Iran could build a dirty bomb with just 60% enriched uranium, which it already has, and put it on a boat or a truck and send it toward Israel. How big a danger is that?
It's a danger, along with any biological weapons. Absolutely a danger. Could be in Europe, too.
General Wesley Clark, very sobering analysis for us tonight. Thank you so much, sir. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, when we come back, what is going on inside President Trump's mind as he makes what is undoubtedly the biggest decision of his presidency? I'll speak to a man who has studied Trump for years when we get back. While President Trump remains uncharacteristically tight-lipped tonight on whether he's made a decision on U.S. military intervention in Iran, we can only wonder what's going through his mind at this critical point. One thing we know for sure is that Trump has long viewed Iran as a threat, not just to the nation, but to his own personal safety. The Islamic Republic, remember, has made assassinating Trump a goal ever since he ordered the killing in 2020 of the leader of the Iranian National Guard, Qasem Soleimani. So how is all of that, those threats of retaliation and assassination by Iran, playing into his decision right now, if at all? Well, my next guest is uniquely qualified to answer this. Alex Eisenstadt is a senior political reporter at Axios. His book, Revenge, the inside story of Trump's return to power, recounted a moment during Trump's 2024 campaign where Trump used a decoy plane to throw off any would-be Iranian assassins. Alex, great to have you here. So, you know, this decision that President Trump is wrestling with is a legacy-defining decision. It's something that could define his presidency. It could dramatically impact our national security. It could dramatically impact the world.
It's absolutely the biggest decision that he is facing so far in his presidency. And it's a decision that has really, we've seen, split his base. Trump, to a certain extent, to a large extent, really ran on the notion of solving the country's problems as opposed to solving the world's problems. And his promise attracted a lot of supporters, people like Tucker Carlson and others. And a lot of those supporters are feeling alienated from the notion that Trump could now launch an attack on Iran. And so this is going to have huge ramifications for Trump's presidency, and also for his supporters who just voted him into office.
The isolationist wing of the party is warning that Netanyahu is dragging the U.S. into this war, while the more hawkish wing agrees that with Israel, that the time is now to finish off Iran's nukes.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I write about in the book is that one of the big reasons Trump won was because he appealed to people in this country who felt ignored by elites, who felt that the government had disregarded them and that wasn't paying enough attention to their problems. Trump very much played to those people. And so the notion, if you listen to some critics, of potentially going into Iran, the notion that he could go into Iran, launch a strike, and start focusing on a foreign war, many people think that by doing that, he's going to alienate a lot of those people who put him into the White House to begin with. And so this is a really critical decision, you're right, for him politically and for his legacy.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are surprised that once he got into office this second time, after Iran reportedly tried to assassinate him, according to our own Justice Department, that he then wrote a letter to the Ayatollah saying, let's sit down, let's work out a deal. What does that say that he was willing to set aside the fact that they tried to kill him, that they hacked into Susie Wiles' email, and yet he still wanted to somehow negotiate a deal instead of do some military strike like this?
Yeah, it's really fascinating. I'm glad you bring that up because I think it illustrates how Trump, above all else, loves to see himself as a deal maker. What has defined Trump's almost 6 months in office right now has been the fact that so much of what he's been focused on is deal making, whether it's with tariffs, whether it's with foreign affairs, Russia, Ukraine, Israel. So much of what Trump's focus has been trying to make deals. And so he likes the idea of making a deal with Iran. Now, here's the situation is that Trump and a lot of people around him are concerned that Iran may be dragging out these negotiations in hopes of achieving a nuclear bomb. Trump doesn't like the idea of getting played, and that may encourage him ultimately to launch a strike on Iran.
Well, he also, at least until recently, reportedly didn't trust Benjamin Netanyahu either. So that he was afraid that Netanyahu would drag him into a war exactly in this way. Alex Eisenstadt, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, switching gears, we're going to come up with another big story that's been sort of making a lot of headlines for actually several years in this country. But today, a huge, huge story. A not guilty verdict in the Karen Reed murder trial. She was accused of killing her Boston police officer boyfriend. We're going to get into the drama inside and outside the court next.
No one has fought harder for justice for John O'Keefe than I have.
All right, now to the breaking news that happened up in Boston. How do you spell relief if you're a murder defendant? Well, it's N-O-T-G-U-I-L-T-Y. That's not guilty. In a Massachusetts courtroom today, that is exactly what jurors said to Karen Reed.
Not guilty, and 002 is guilty of operating under the influence of liquor, and 003 not guilty. Thank you.
By the way, if you can hear as they're reading that verdict, all the cheers from the people out on the street who've been out there following the trial day in and day out. Karen Reed and her defense team hugged and cried after the verdicts were read. She was found not guilty for the two most serious charges of second-degree murder and manslaughter. She faced those charges in connection to the death of her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, on a snowy night back in January of 2022. The jury did find her guilty of the lesser charge of drunk driving. Outside the courtroom, all those crowds shouted in support of Reed's acquittal on those serious charges.
Free Turtle Boy! Free Turtle Boy! Free Turtle Boy!
Reed supporters who've been a constant presence throughout the trial, both the first trial and the second trial, raised the volume even higher when she walked out victorious. Reed could barely be heard over the crowd when she finally approached a bank of microphones and thanked her supporters and her defense team.
I just want to say two things. Number one is I could not be standing here without these amazing supporters who have supported me and my team financially and, more importantly, emotionally for almost 4 years. And the second thing I want to say is no one has fought harder for justice for John O'Keefe than I have and my team. Thank you.
It's an extraordinary scene. The verdict marks an end to Reed's odyssey through the criminal justice system. Her first trial ended in a mistrial nearly a year ago. The jury was deadlocked on charges then for the drunk driving conviction. Reed will serve 1 year of probation since she's a first-time offender. All right, for more on all this, we're joined by trial attorney and legal analyst Misty Maris, Flint McColgan, the police and courts reporter for the Boston Herald, who was in the courtroom as the verdict was read, and of course, Ronnie Estanislao, who was a juror in Reed's first murder trial. Flint, I'm going to start with you because you were in the court. What a stunning verdict. What was the reaction in the courtroom?
Well, as you mentioned in your lead up to this, the eruption of the noise of her supporters outside, it really drowned out a lot of that verdict reading and the subsequent sentencing. A lot of me and the other reporters kind of looked at each other to make sure we understood the verdict on the second count. So it was loud in there and emotional.
What did O'Keefe's family do?
Yeah, they filed out right after the verdict was read. Paul O'Keefe, John O'Keefe's younger brother, he put his head in his hand, not upon her acquittal for the murder charge, but when she was also acquitted for manslaughter. He looked down, put his head in his hand. They left before sentencing and before the jury left.
And I'm sure they could hear all those cheers from outside as well.
Yes, they did. I mean, no one could avoid it. In fact, in post courthouse discussion, you played the clip of Karen Reed talking. I was within 2 feet of her. I couldn't hear a single word. I had to listen to the video playback, too. So.
Ronnie, I've got to get your reaction to this. You were a juror in the first trial. You predicted on this show a few nights ago that you thought there would be another hung jury or an acquittal. We heard today it's an acquittal on those serious charges. Are you surprised?
I'm not surprised. I think I knew that they would find a verdict for the first charge and the last charge. But the second charge was different this time around since there was OUI. So I'm glad of the results and how it turned out. Unfortunate for the O'Keefes, though, we don't have closure on that piece.
Yeah, you've said from the start, though, that you think that Karen Reed is innocent of these charges.
Agreed. That's true.
Yeah, and after listening, you were a juror in the first trial and listened to all the evidence. Misty, what was the difference between trial number 1 and trial number 2 that do you think led to this acquittal? Because she's now, at least when it comes to criminal charges, this is a pretty much a get out of jail free and go live your life card.
Right, absolutely. So it was pretty much the same legal theories presented by both the prosecution and the defense, but the trials were actually quite different. Prosecutors showed video clips of Karen Reed in all of these different media interviews, which they thought were going to really sway the jury. Very, very obviously, they fought tooth and nail to get them in. But to me, the biggest difference was Michael Proctor, the lead investigator. He did not take the stand. He took the stand in trial 1, and it was a disaster for prosecutors confronted with terrible
Let's just remind our audience,
yeah.
He was the lead investigator on the murder. He had all sorts of leaked text messages, not leaked, they were admitted
crude,
into court.
Unprofessional, shared with other people who were outside of the investigation. Showing bias, a lot of impropriety. Ultimately, his testimony, those text messages, that led to him losing his job. There was an investigation. He was terminated. So going into trial 2, prosecutors had to make a strategic decision. Do you put him on the stand again, knowing what's to come? He's in a worse position. He's been terminated because of his conduct with respect to this case, or not put him on the stand. They opted to keep him off. He was never called. They read some messages in regarding the investigation through another witness, tried to get ahead of it. But you know what the defense did, Elizabeth? They pointed to that empty chair and they said,
why isn't the lead investigator here?
Why wouldn't the lead investigator be a part of this trial, especially when the crux of the defense argument was that this was a shoddy investigation focused only on Karen Reed and didn't look for anyone else?
Ronnie, you listened to I'm sorry, now I'm Proctor. Thank you. Officer Proctor testify in the first trial. What was your impression of him as you watched him under oath?
I think it was, I don't know. I think that it was maybe a biased investigation. It wasn't very well done. It could have been done better, especially given the circumstances. They didn't do all of the interviews that they needed.
Super quick, Misty. It's not over. She now faces a civil suit filed by Officer O'Keefe's family.
Yes, and the standard and burden of proof is preponderance of the evidence, much lower. So that's a whole other legal battle.
So she's not quite out of the woods quite yet. All right. Misty Maris, Flint McColgan, Ronnie Estanislao, thank you all so much. Coming up, we're going to go back to our top story. Is President Trump going to launch military strikes on Iran? It is a question he is wrestling with. It's a question on everyone's minds tonight. Chris Cuomo joins me live next to discuss. All right, major uncertainty tonight in the Middle East and here at home as President Trump weighs whether to conduct U.S. airstrikes in Iran. Chris Cuomo joins me now. Chris, it's not a small thing. This is by far the biggest decision of his presidency, maybe of his life, that he has to make. I was speaking with General Wesley Clark a little bit ago. He said he thinks he's going to make a decision soon, like as in tonight or tomorrow night.
Yeah, and at the same time, there's no rush. I mean, we don't have any intelligence, at least that's been made public, that makes this an exigency. I know Israel is making that case, and they're actively doing something they wanted to do for a very long time. Doesn't mean that America has to act. I get the political pressure, and more importantly, the tendency in our current poisoned political atmosphere to go at Trump for not making a decision. But I think that's a mistake. It bothered me also when Democrats and other critics were going after him about the tariffs with that taco thing. Right. If you don't like the tariffs, why are you pushing him about stepping back on the tariffs? It's this constant seeking of advantage. Now isn't the time for that. What it's time for, though, if they want to make a point, who says it's Trump's decision to make? Who says? Why is a president allowed to act unilaterally when it comes to the military? Since when? Congress is too quiet about this.
Yeah, well, I asked a congressman about that. He said, oh, if it goes longer, if it goes past this initial strike on Fordo, then he should come, see us. But,
he doesn't know the law, or he's full of it.
Well, I will leave that to our
Or both. Thank you, Elizabeth.
It's your show. Take it away.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.